Helen, you've been a member of the church for quite a while. You joined in 1950. So that makes you, if my math is right, a 74-year-old member. Does that sound right to you?
That's exactly right, yes. Because Dave and I were married in 49.
Okay.
The day after Christmas. At 49 at the Dormont Presbyterian Church.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you were married in the Dormont Presbyterian Church because that was your church at the time. Church. And you went to the Dormont Church with your parents? With your parents. Mm-hmm.
And my grandparents went to the German church downtown.
And you used to go with them for a while.
I never went to the German church. I visited once to see what it was like, but no, I never went there.
So your grandparents were German? Did they speak German?
Just, odds and ends. No, I never heard them really speak German.
Mm-hmm. But just some words they did?
Yes, some words.
Mm-hmm. And I was remembering you told me about, you had really good memories of growing up. You grew up in Beachview?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What was one of your favorite memories of growing up in Beachview?
My mother moved out to Dormont. Her whole family built a house on Ducal Avenue right on the streetcar track.
Mm-hmm.
The backyard was on the streetcar track. And as a child, after school, my mother would take me up to the streetcar, and at first took me out on the streetcar. I was, I don't know, in kindergarten or first grade. But I think the conductor got to know me. And he must have said, she can come out, she knows where to get off. So I was going myself from Beachview to Dormont every Friday after school, after kindergarten, to Dormont, where my parents, or grandparents, and aunt and uncle lived. And I'd be there for the weekend most of the time. Either that or my father would come and get me.
That sounds like kind of a big deal, that you went by yourself.
I became very close to my Aunt Helen, my Uncle Ed, and my grandmother and grandfather were all in the same house. Then they had a son who was about 3 years younger. Don Shaver was the son. And the Shavers went to United Presbyterian Church too. But Grandma and Granddaddy still went down to the German church down to Smithfield, Evangelical, I think it's called, downtown. And then the Beinhardts went there too, and they would always bring him home.
The Beinhardts went to the German church?
Yes.
How about that? The Beinhardts that are still in Mount Lebanon.
That same family.
How about that?
Funeral family.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I never knew much about it at the time, but I was 12 years old and playing the piano, and they needed someone to play the piano, and Fritz Beinhardt was in charge of this group Sunday evening. And I ended up playing the piano for them. Most of them were either high school seniors in high school, or maybe first year college people.
And you were only 12? And you were only 12 when you played the piano?
Something like that.
Oh my gosh.
I was much younger than they were. Anyway.
And which church was that for that you played?
Dormont Presbyterian.
Oh, how about that? So you played for the young You told me once, Young Christians Endeavor Group or something it was
We
called?
called it Christian Endeavor.
The Christian Endeavor Group. Mm-hmm.
Sam Fraser was in that group. I don't remember many of the names anymore.
How old was Fritz Beinauer at the time?
I think he was in his 20s.
So he was maybe part of that group.
Yes,
He was one of the older ones of that
he
group.
was the older one. of the
Okay.
group.
Well, that was quite an honor for it to be asked, wasn't it?
I guess there was no one else that could do anything.
Did you have any special songs that you like to play?
I have it's number 17th in the Green Hymn Book.
Number 17.
I have a song that anyway, I still have the hymn book. I needed to take it home to practice. I wasn't that
I
good.
see.
Fritz was a good bit older. Most of them were high school, like seniors or out of high school at the time.
Did you have any other good memories when you were growing up? What was it like growing up in that, in Beachview and Dormont area, when you were in like elementary school or?
Well, I was never in the Dormont school system.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the city school system. I went to Beechwood School.
Okay.
And but my mother had been one of the starters of the Dormont Presbyterian Church.
Oh, wow.
When they're from, we moved out to Dormont. So there's Mother. She got Dad, I guess, to go, and then Helen and Uncle Ed.
And was it just newly built then?
Evidently,
What do you think it was
all
around the?
Dormont was pretty much
That's
newly
right. Would it
built.
have been around in the 20s, or
Oh, yes.
or before then?
Maybe a little before.
Mm-hmm.
The children got me a sweatshirt and it has Dormont incorporated.
Oh, really?
And there's a date on it. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the late 18 or
19
19
something.
something, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And your family was instrumental in starting that church.
Yes.
That's pretty great, isn't it?
And Helen and Uncle Ed went there. And of course, we all came in from Beachview and went there.
What was it like growing up in church?
My mother seemed to have charge of every dinner that was there, or at least she and her friends. They were very active. During the Depression, when there wasn't much going on, Mother and some of her friends started Tom Thumb weddings. And I remember those because Mother made the bridal costumes and made all the outfits. My cousin Donald was the groom, and my sister was the bride. I don't remember the ceremony, really. But I had that bridal dress when my children in a costume box.
Oh.
And when the neighborhood children come over to play, there was one boy that always wanted to be the bride. He lived across the street from us. He was maybe 6, 7. Because that's the size the dress was
Mm-hmm.
for someone that age.
Were there a
But
lot
they
of...
did a lot of things like that to keep interest in the church. There was nothing else to do, I guess, during the Depression.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And they tried to keep people busy, I think, with something or other. And maybe no one had money for the movies either. Maybe, I don't know, when I was young. So
Were there a lot of children in Sunday school?
I don't remember much about. I remember Mrs. Swango, and I'm sure anybody of my age or older would remember her. She had the department for the real young ones. And everybody knew Mrs. Swango. Everybody went through Mrs. Swango's class. Or as you go in the church, it was the lower entrance. You go straight back, and it was a room on the right. That was the beginner's room. And you know, in later years when I lived in Florida in the winter, Dad came home from from golfing one day. He said, I met somebody from Dormont Presbyterian. Would you know him? He was a little boy who was supposed to be in the beginner's class with Mrs. Swango, maybe before that. But he would run away from church almost every week.
Oh, wow.
And the ladies' class would just dissolve, and everybody had looked for this young boy. He was maybe 6 years old. When I was in Florida, Dave came home and said, there's someone that bowled with us, or that played golf with us today, from Dormont Presbyterian. Would you know him? Now, it comes back, I think it was Erickson. And I said, yeah, he's the one that would run away every Sunday. They come up and get his mother in the mother's class. And the whole class would go out looking for him in the church building and in the community. They just couldn't, they had a terrible time holding on to him.
You all did a great job because he grew up.
He was bowling in Florida.
Yeah.
Or playing golf in Florida.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about when you met Dave? I think that's a wonderful story. When you met Dave, how did you meet your husband?
Well, we moved. He had lived in the house in Dormont for a long time and went to school there all through, played football for the Dormont High School. I never knew him until when I was a college senior. And while I was away at college, the family moved from Beachview, where I had lived, to Dormont and bought the house across the street from Dave's folks. And of course, he was in the Army at that point. So I never knew him for a long time. Then some, the first year or so after I finished college, I taught, but I went back and forth to the Carrick High School with my dad. And sometimes we'd be driving up and he'd pull up and I'd say a few words to Dave. I guess I had met him on the street. shouldn't say that. I've missed something there because he was home on furlough, and I was there. And his folks invited me to go out to dinner after church with them. It was the first time I ever met him, really. But I'm sure he had a lot of old girlfriends or so forth in Dormont.
He had been a football player, I guess. Are you okay on time? Mm-hmm. He had been a football player.
Yes, he had been.
So he probably...
In fact, Huffnagel. Do you know Huffnagels at all? They just moved in here. And he knew Dave. He knew Bill Neal.
Oh, that's great, isn't it? What's Huffnagel's first name?
I don't know his first name.
Okay. So you went to Penn State, right?
Who?
You.
I went to Penn State.
You went to Penn State. Mm-hmm. And you studied, what did you study at Penn State?
Home ec.
Home ec. And you became?
Education.
Mm-hmm. You became a teacher. Were you teaching at Carrick then?
I just taught 1 year at Carrick as a permanent sub. Then that's my first year out of college. And then the next year, I taught at Langley High School in home ec and science. And Claire Rankin, I don't know if that's a familiar name to anybody, but they went to our church.
I feel like I've heard that name.
I mean, the Dormont. Well, they went to Dormont, but they went to the UP church too for a while. Taught there too.
And then so you met Dave when he was home on furlough.
Oh, I just met him say on the street corner, this is Dave, you know, and that was it. But the first time, and then I think his mother and dad, they invited me to dinner with them after church one time.
And then did you keep dating then after you went out to dinner with him? No.
No.
How did you finally get together then?
I'm not even sure. We talked. If we both happened to get home the same time, we were both parked across the street, on the street there on Dormont Avenue. And we just talked. But the first date I really had was on my birthday, and I drove always with my dad because he worked over in Carrick, and we happened to get back at the same time, and he just happened to say, "Oh, this is Helen's birthday. Why don't you two go out together?"
Oh.
So my dad made the first date. We did. We went out to on 51, that place everybody used to go to.
Tambellini's?
No, to dance.
To dance. You went out to dance. Oh, I don't remember on dance places.
That was far before Tambellini's. We had a nice evening. We danced together, and we were friends. It was fun, but that was sort of the end of it, too.
Oh, it was?
Oh, yes.
But it wasn't the end forever then, obviously.
But I'd see him and we'd talk. You know, if he came home or I came home at the same time, we'd be both parked out in front of the high school.
And then what? And then how did you happen to start dating steady enough that you decided to get married?
I can hardly tell you that.
And then after you were married in Dormont Church, then how did you decide which church you were going to go to?
Well, Dave's family was so involved in the UP church. And then through Dave and all, I got to know Margie and Lou Brown and Betty and Bob Clemens in that group. And then when, was it Margie? No, Jack Paulus moved out of Pittsburgh. They had a spot in their bridge club It was a covered dish dinner bridge club. And so they asked us if we'd like to join. I don't think we were even married when but we had been seeing a lot of these people. Because I had known Lou Brown, from years ahead. And so, anyway, I started to go to, I never went to the UP church, I don't think, until 79ers started. And then the rest of this group all belonged to 79ers, and the third Friday was a 79er night that everybody
Oh, is that right?
seemed to go to church for dinner, and it was covered dish, you cook something. And so I started to go to that, and it was mostly for married people, but I think at that time it was kind of obvious that maybe we were engaged, but
Sounds like the church was an important part of your life.
I heard, and I think you should know this.
Okay.
My dad worked for a man whose boss was a Mr. Dunlap, and their family went to their church. I don't know that the mother and father ever did. Maybe they did. But my dad helped to build a cottage for Mr. Dunlap up around Cochranton, Pennsylvania. And then after a while, he took my sister and I. In fact, they had a big box that they had a cot in. It was a size that would take a cot. And we were young enough that it would be one of us at each end and our feet would mix in the center. And as they grew up, and this continued, they went to the UP church. And Shirley and Imogene talked so much about the things that they did that I became very interested.
It sounded like a fun place to be, it sounds like.
Yes, it did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at that time, college age, the war was on. You just didn't do much.
No.
But I'd heard a lot about what Imogene, who was older, did up at that church. And then Imogene, or one of them, was going with George Brown. And he lived in, he and his brother rented a room in Dunlap's house. I don't know, our different people just got mixed together.
What do you remember about church? What did you enjoy doing? You said you got together with the 79ers once a month for their social and then played bridge with some people, but what else do you remember liking to do at the church?
Oh, I taught Sunday school for a while.
What age Sunday school?
First, it was just kindergarten, or later on I had ninth graders, a mixed group, and then we decided that didn't work too well. It's better to have a boys' class and a girls' class, so I taught there for a couple of years.
Did you ever play the piano?
Oh, I did for the junior department for a couple of years, yes. And George Harrington played the piano. And I know we were up on the stage The piano was up on the stage. As we directed, that whole room, I don't know what you call it now, was filled with different classes. On each side, you had small rooms where after the opening exercises, they go in their small rooms.
So they all the Sunday schools used to gather together for opening exercises, probably to sing, and you played the piano?
Yeah, and
then-
I led the singing. I mean, I was older then. I was in college at this point.
So one thing I think is interesting is that after you and Dave got married and you had Claire was really little, you lived on the Gilfillan property. I think that's fascinating. Could you tell us about that?
That was quite interesting, yes. Well, we were looking for a place to live, and they knew the Gilfillans from church, not well, but I guess Dave called them, and there wasn't anything. But he called back about a year later. We lived in the Campbell house in a little apartment they had fixed during the war, just that people needed housing. So many came to Pittsburgh to do work. So they had fixed up this little apartment, and Dave's brother came home from the service, and he was in it. And we lived in their house for a couple years, but something was said, I don't know whether they saw him in church, said, and maybe his dad said, why don't you call John Gilfill and see if they have anything? Because he knew, that he had tenant farmers and property elsewhere. And so Dave did. And they said, oh, we don't have anything now. But a year later, John Gilfill called up and said, our tenant farmer just left, and there is a house. If you want to look at it, come look at it. Well, we went and looked at it, and after you live in your mother-in-law's house, and one room, and it was a sleeping porch off the back, and a very small kitchen with a small stove, and it looked mighty good. But it was on the farm out there, right on Washington Road. We went out and looked at it, and it was neat and nice. It really was, and maybe they had just had it repainted, I don't know, but it was fresh. But there was no closet in the bedroom. There's an open fireplace in the kitchen that had no damper. You couldn't close it off. And then there were a nice big room that we used for a living room, dining room, and then a bedroom. But anyway, we decided it looked pretty good, and we said yes. First of all, I remember Dave had a door from the living room out on a small front porch. On the porch, he built a closet around, and that was our closet.
Oh. Did you have to go out onto the front porch to get your clothes?
Oh, no.
Oh.
No, it was a door to the porch.
Okay.
But instead of a porch, he built around and made it into a closet, and Gilfilms didn't mind. They said, as long as you make it look like the other, and he did. Dave was very handy.
And that house isn't there anymore. Is that house still there?
No, when South Hills Village took over, they burned that house down. That was part of the the property that South Hills Village took over, and then a lot of the dirt from the top they just threw down that hill. So I think the topography of the land changed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But so we had many unusual, happy years there. They were unusual because neither of us had been farmers, and we had all this property to use. So we had a huge garden. We had 79er picnics all the time because we had lots of property there for them. And there was another entrance to that property down below, and Dave even cleared that off. By that time, we had bought anyway, instead of just mowing the lawn, it would also cut down smaller trees and all. So he fixed a driveway into the property down below. And 79ers, everybody picnicked out there. They could drive in down there after Dave cleared it off.
Washington Road was different then, wasn't it?
Well, it was the same as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Not so many lights,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the same width. But it was new, and people hadn't used it, so it wasn't too busy.
Mm-hmm.
Our first dog was killed on Washington Road, though, with traffic.
Well, that's sad. Did you still have little collies like you?
Well, we had the big collie then.
The big collie. Mm-hmm.
She was pretty good. She didn't go out much, but she went out once too often.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Traffic was building up on Washington Road, so she was killed on Washington Road.
Before we go on any further, you had something you wanted to show about. There was Dave, your husband, he grew up in the Mount Lebanon Presbyterian Church.
Yes, he did.
And his father was instrumental in it in some way too, right?
Well, his father was involved in the United Presbyterian Church as a whole.
Oh.
He was, I don't know if you call it a director. Who's who among United Presbyterian elders? Mm-hmm. By elder, they meant someone in the whole United Presbyterian Church.
You mean like the governing body?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What was his name?
Charles. Dave's oldest brother was Charles Campbell, too.
Mm-hmm.
And he had charge of the Sunday school there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what he did with that Sunday school. He was superintendent from 1916 until 1942.
It's a long time, isn't it?
And he did a lot with the Sunday school. And he read everything he could find on building a Sunday school.
Would you say that the church was important to your family, your children, when they were young?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, they went. Those days they were going Fridays after school. It was a Friday, but it's one day after school. Yeah, church was very important to the children. All their growing up years, and Claire for quite a while after. She enjoyed the singing and did so much help. In fact, leading the singing. And Sunday mornings she would lead the singing.
Oh, wow. Yes, I remember. Claire has such a beautiful voice.
She sang at so many weddings
Mm-hmm.
and funerals
Mm-hmm.
up there.
Mm-hmm.
And she led the young people's choir, or I don't know if you call it a choir, but
I think you told me once, while you're thinking, we could just move on to a different question. So I think you told me once that your favorite scripture verse is from Psalm 121. Is that correct? I think you said, I lift my eyes up to the hills. From where does my help come from?
yeah.
Do you have any other favorite scriptures?
Not a favorite, I guess. I mean, that's it, but
Has your faith helped you throughout your life?
oh yes. Yes, I had one very upsetting time that, of course, I don't want to talk about it,
Okay.
but my faith carried me through that. So,
And those times are when it's really important for us to have faith and to be glad for the parents that raised us in the church and gave us that faith. So I'm glad about that too.
I've always had parents that didn't push, but went along and I could talk to.
Mm-hmm. So if there was anything that you wanted to make sure that your legacy passes along, what would that be?
Family. Family. Not only mother and dad, but I had an aunt and uncle. The people in Dormont
Mm-hmm.
that were very close. Made me feel like I was very special.
Mm-hmm. That means a lot, doesn't it? I know you're close with your sister's
Oh yes.
family still, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Diane took a few days off to study and decided to take them here. And then while she was in Pittsburgh and not working, she come, for a little while at lunchtime or in the evening. So I'm still very close to them, particularly the oldest daughter. There were 4 children. The oldest was a boy, and the next 2 were girls, and I was very close to them. And the younger one, too. Yeah, get after the school. I don't think they should take over Sundays after church. No, I don't think that's a good idea. What with the boys and their baseball right after church or right after lunch. There wasn't so much for girls.
You raised your kids, David and Claire, on Altadena.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. After you moved from Upper St. Clair, you moved to Altadena. And what kind of things did you enjoy doing at the church? And what kind of things did Dave enjoy doing at the church? I know Dave must have been a trustee.
He was always a trustee or so.
One of the things that he liked that he was very proud of, he ushered.
We were involved in 79ers.
Mm-hmm.
He had Little League, but that wasn't church. So,
Any other memories that you'd like to share?
I do remember the I think the first month we were in our new house, or the second month. What did Dave come down with? Something. And of course, I wasn't involved in the church very much at that point. And the minister, what was our first minister name?
Maybe Carrie Wissinger?
No.
McCowan?
No, that was before Wissinger.
McDonald?
McDonald.
Mm-hmm. Miles McDonald.
I think I'd just been there a couple of weeks and Miles came. I never felt I knew Carrie very well, but then I hadn't been there long.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people that had been there thought a great deal of McCowan.
Mm-hmm.
He was evidently a very fine person.
Mm-hmm. But Miles came over, and it was because Dave was sick?
Yeah.
That meant a lot to people, didn't it?
It did.
That was one thing that
'Cause that
Miles
was
must
my
have been
first.
very good at. Miles was very good at that, wasn't he?
I don't know that he ever came for anything else, but that first time, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
meant a lot.
Mm-hmm. And there was one thing that you had mentioned to me before, that Dave was very proud of the rose window.
Oh, yes, I don't know who gave the memorial for that,
Mm-hmm.
but the custodians would never light it up. Turn the light on, for services.
And where is this window? The rose window?
It's right in the center, right up high.
In the sanctuary.
I don't know where the light is, but he'd get hold of an usher or someone and tell them, get that rose window on. But people, I wonder if they're still remembering to light it today. But there is
That's what we do,
That's their job.
and we light it.
Isn't that good to know?
Well, Dave tried to get Jim to do it, and I think he did
Mm-hmm.
when Jim took over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I never did any activities with the church and Dave till after we were married. But the films certainly were involved, and they used to meet. I knew the Dunlaps who went to that church when I was the child, younger than the Dunlap girls. There were three of them, Shirley and Emma Jean, and I forget the oldest. And they were active in church affairs. But they talked about things there that they were doing something all the time. And as I read Dad Campbell's report,
Mm-hmm.
I could understand why. I didn't realize he was involved. He'd even take the Sunday school up to Idlewild Park, arrange for it. One way or the other, I don't know how they did that, but Dave would mention it. And I think they had things down in our park too. And Dad Campbell was Sunday school superintendent at this point when it grew so. And he
It sounds like he had a considerable investment in time in the young people of the church.
His goal of concentrated study of the Bible and preparation for church membership of pupils of the school was never permitted to become obscured. Decision Day was the most important event of the year. And this I think I can add a little bit to. Mr. Campbell had an unusual gift. This is written by Doc Lacey. I don't know if you ever knew the Clemens.
I did.
Well,
Bob.
you know, Bob's wife was Lacey.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that.
Well, Doc Lacey wrote this article, the father of Bob.
Mm-hmm.
He had an unusual gift of selecting officers and teachers. Then, having secured them, he had rare ability in enlisting their undivided support and cooperation. His interest was not confined in the local school. He collected during the term of office an exceptional library on Bible school methods and activities. And I've never heard of that library. Maybe you don't need many books to be a library on that, but from which he called the best to be used in the school which he directed. I know he'd heard of a wonderful women's teacher up in Mount Washington. This is the only specific thing I ever heard Dad Campbell telling about. And that church, I guess, had gone way down. There were hardly any in the class, and he'd heard about this woman who was their teacher. He got her to come to our church and teach the women's class, Mrs. McKelvey.
Oh, yeah.
And for years, I've heard of Mrs. McKelvey's class of women at church. But of things like that, of course I didn't know him till after I was married either, but he never pushed. And he was always so wonderful. I got an end table, something like that you'd put at the end of a sofa from his sister, who was never married, a school marma, and she was at one of the special girls' schools in town. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, everybody was half afraid of Aunt Mary. And so I thought, I can't tell her. I just bought Bond furniture, and that won't go with mine at all. But I did tell Dad Campbell, and he said, I'll take care of that. And he did quietly, was taken care of. Aunt Mary was always nice to me.
Oh, good.
We never had any problems. But I didn't know what to do. I hate to say I don't want the end table you have sent me, because I knew it was lovely, but that was when blonde furniture was just coming out, and I thought it was wonderful. So I'd already bought end tables.
He sounds like a wonderful father-in-law.
Yeah. But he took care of things so easily and nicely. And he was a dear.
Well, this has been such a nice time talking to you. We've really enjoyed it.